The sky above Earth was no longer blue. It was a furious canvas of fire and smoke, torn apart by endless flashes of battle. Across the ruined plains and shattered oceans, humanity launched its final, desperate attack. Old warships, patched together, from the last scraps of technology, surged forward like a broken tide, their engines screaming against the weight of despair. No sleek fleets, no shining banners. Only battered hulls and determined hearts carried them into the jaws of death. In the command centers, grim-faced generals stared at blinking screens, issuing orders with voices steady as stone, while pilots, in cracked helmets, gripped their controls with hands calloused by years of endless war. There was no turning back. Every soldier, every fighter, every carrier that rose into the choking sky understood the truth. This was not a mission for glory. This was not a battle to impress history books. This was survival. The last wild swing of a dying world refusing to be forgotten. As the first wave met the enemy's towering armada, the heavens lit up in a brutal dance of death. Enemy warships, vast as mountains and cold as tombstones, answered the human charge with devastating fire, carving through the human lines with merciless precision. Yet for every ship that fell, another rose behind it, like a stubborn heartbeat, refusing to stop. Great cruisers shattered under plasma storms. Smaller fighters weaved and burned through enemy fire like sparks in a hurricane. Inside the cockpits, pilots roared in defiance, shouting into radios even as alarms screamed warnings of death. On the ground, scorched cities turned into battlegrounds once more, where soldiers charged down rubble-strewn streets, dodging fire, and falling buildings. Smoke and dust blotted out the stars, but it did not matter anymore. The only star that mattered now was Earth itself. Above the cities, swarms of drones buzzed like angry hornets, some homemade, some stolen from the enemy, all flying toward the battle with a single desperate command: destroy or die trying. The air smelled of burning metal, scorched flesh, and something older, the scent of hope clinging to life by its teeth. Across every frequency, battle cries mixed with last goodbyes, promises shouted into the chaos, reaching ears that would never hear them again. Somewhere, deep inside the human fleet, a colossal carrier, long written off as too old to fly, powered up its ancient main guns and roared a challenge at the heavens, punching a hole clean through an enemy dreadnought. The battlefield became a place where bravery and death walked hand in hand, where names were written into history with blood and fire. Ships that had flown for years without rest finally found their graves among the stars, torn apart in bright flashes of silent explosions. On the ground, soldiers charged through ruins, their boots pounding broken streets, their bodies pushing forward even when their minds screamed to turn back. Squadrons vanished in a blink, swallowed by the crushing force of enemy fire, but every loss opened a wound in the invader's armor. Every sacrifice carved a path closer to victory. In the skies above, a squad of fighter pilots, nicknamed the Iron Hawks, made a daring run at an enemy carrier, knowing full well it would cost their lives. With steady voices, they called out their final positions, a roll call of the brave, before ramming their ships straight into the enemy's heart. On the ground, a young soldier named Mara led her team through a gauntlet of machine fire, carrying wounded comrades on her back, refusing to leave anyone behind. Her armor cracked, her body bleeding, but her spirit burned brighter than the fires around her. In the command bunkers, Generals received report after report of fallen heroes, and though each loss twisted their hearts, no order was changed. The plan demanded everything, and everything it would take. Across the broken cities, ordinary civilians joined the fight, picking up weapons from the fallen, defending the last strongholds with shaking hands and steel determination. Children carried ammunition. Old men rewired broken cannons. Even when the enemy unleashed new horrors, machines built to crush hope itself, the defenders stood their ground, shouting songs of home and freedom into the smoke. Above them, orbiting in the debris-filled sky, Admiral Vance's flagship burned, half its systems failing, yet it stayed in the fight, delivering support to the very end. The radio channels crackled with final messages, brave voices leaving behind promises, and farewells meant for loved ones who might never hear them. No life was thrown away carelessly. Each sacrifice struck at the enemy's core. Every fallen fighter weakened the invader's iron hold, breaking it piece by bloody piece. In one shattered plaza, Captain Rios and his squad made a last stand, against overwhelming odds, covering the retreat of 1,000 refugees. One by one, his comrades fell, until only Rios remained, wounded and barely standing, firing into the dark until silence claimed him. His actions saved those 1,000 souls, and though he never lived to see it, his name would be spoken with honor for generations. Heroes rose and fell faster than the eye could follow, but their deeds built a bridge of courage that others crossed to press the attack. Death was everywhere, but fear had no place left. Only grit, only heart, only a deep, burning loyalty to the earth that had given them life. As the battle dragged on, battered and bleeding forces locked arms with one another, refusing to surrender, refusing to kneel. The ground ran red with their sacrifice, but in their sacrifice bloomed the fragile hope of survival. In the end, it was not the enemy's weapons that decided the fate of Earth, nor the numbers in any ledger. It was the simple, stubborn, shining bravery of men and women who looked into the face of death and said without trembling, "Not today." Amid the chaos and ruin of battle, where every second felt like the last, a discovery was made that would change everything. It happened not in the grand strategy rooms or from the admirals perched above the battlefield, but down in the grime and wreckage, where blood mixed with oil and smoke clouded every breath. Sergeant Leon, leading a small battered unit deep into enemy-controlled ruins, stumbled upon something no one had expected. Hidden beneath the carcass of a fallen enemy war machine, there lay a shattered control core, exposed and flickering weakly, with dying signals. Against orders to fall back, Leon ordered her squad to hold position while she and an engineer, Corporal Nils, pried open the smoking device with bare hands and broken tools. Inside, they uncovered blueprints and pulse patterns revealing the unthinkable. The enemy forces, believed to be completely independent and unstoppable, were all tethered to a single network, a master command node hidden somewhere high above, Earth's orbit. If that node could be disrupted, the entire invading army would stumble like a giant struck blind. Risking their lives, Leon and her squad transmitted the information through half-shattered comms, racing against the clock as enemy. Scouts closed in from all sides. Above, in the wounded human fleet, tired eyes widened at the news. Scrambling battered tech teams and cobbling together what drones and spy ships remained, humanity's last forces began a desperate search for the hidden node. Days blurred into blood-soaked nights as squads fought through traps and ambushes to scan debris fields, lunar craters, and broken enemy wreckage for clues. It was Private Aaron, a quiet technician more used to fixing field radios than leading charges, who finally found it. An artificial asteroid cloaked by layers of debris and electronic camouflage, pulsing with the eerie heartbeat of the enemies. Command signal. Realizing time was short, Command ordered a suicidal strike. A fleet of old nuclear-tipped warheads, manually piloted by volunteers, aimed straight for the hidden heart of the invaders' power. In the cold silence of space, the tiny ships, each barely holding together with welding scars and prayer, launched in a ragged line toward the hidden asteroid. Enemy ships swarmed to intercept, lighting the blackness with endless bursts of death, but the pilots pressed on, weaving through the storm with burning engines and silent determination. The first few warheads were shot down, their crews vanishing into the dark without even a flare. But enough broke through, enough to breach the outer defenses. In a single blinding flash, the hidden node shattered, ripping apart the enemy's control like snapping a puppet's strings. Across Earth's broken cities and skies, the enemy forces faltered. Giant walkers stumbled mid-step. Warships spun wildly out of control. Drones dropped from the air like dead crows. For a moment, the battlefield froze, stunned into silence by the sudden shift. On every front, weary human fighters lifted their heads, barely daring to believe what their eyes showed. The enemy's perfect coordination, their endless, relentless pressure. It was crumbling. The invincible armor of the invader had been built not of strength, but of connection. And now, severed from their guiding mind, they became nothing more than broken machines and confused monsters. Leon, covered in dust and blood, looked out, over the ruins where the enemy was collapsing, and allowed herself the first real breath of hope in years. The weakness had always been there, hidden behind layers of terror and myth, waiting for those brave enough, desperate enough, to find it. And they had. The final hour of the war arrived not with a grand parade or a sudden cheer, but with a heavy, trembling silence that wrapped itself around the broken world. The enemy's fall was not clean. Even without their guiding mind, pockets of resistance fought on with savage instinct, forcing the battered defenders to dig deeper into their reserves of strength. Cities that had once soared with glass towers and shining lights were now cracked skeletons of their former glory, dust and ash covering the land like a shroud. But through the ruin, human forces pressed forward, step by bloody step, reclaiming each street, each field, each battered monument with grim determination. In the skies, the last of the enemy warships spiraled down, crashing into oceans and wastelands, sending pillars of fire into the heavens. On the ground, soldiers moved like living ghosts, faces hollow from loss, yet eyes still burning with the memory of what had been stolen and what had been fought for. Across the continents, survivors emerged from bunkers and shattered homes, blinking against the gray light, carrying with them the quiet, stubborn spirit that no machine could erase. Whole families wandered the ruins in search of loved ones, and where they found only rubble, they planted flags and flowers, refusing to let grief claim them completely. In the heart of the battlefield, near the ruins of what was once the world's largest city, the final enemy fortress stood, a twisted black tower that had scarred the skyline for years. It fell not to a grand weapon, but to a handful of soldiers who climbed its burning skeleton with their bare, bleeding hands and tore its heart apart from within. When it collapsed, it sent a wave of dust and ash across the ruined land, and for a long, breathless moment the world seemed to hold still. Then came the sound. Not cheers, not songs, but a low, rising hum of life itself, of footsteps returning to forgotten streets, of voices calling out to one another, of fires being lit not for destruction, but for warmth and hope. The earth, battered and burned, had been reclaimed. Yet victory carried a heavy cost. Fields lay poisoned, rivers ran dark, and cities stood silent, graveyards of dreams that would never be rebuilt the same way. Millions had fallen, their names now stitched forever into the soul of the planet. Every smiling face lost, every brave voice silenced, weighed upon those who lived. Memorials sprang up in the ruins, simple stones carved with names, sometimes only with initials because full memories had been lost in the fires. But still, life refused to give up its place. Green shoots broke through the cracked pavement. Children, born beneath the shadow of invasion, laughed for the first time under free skies. The survivors built not because they forgot the pain, but because they remembered it and chose to honor it with every brick, every seed, every song sung into the healing wind. The earth had been reclaimed not just from an enemy of flesh and steel, but from the deeper enemy of despair. In the end, it was not weapons or armies or even grand strategies that saved the world. It was the heart, stubborn, scarred, but unbroken, that rose from the ashes and whispered into the endless sky, "We are still here,